Hello again, everybody. Welcome back. It's another edition of Picking Winners with the Cheezeman. Week number 20, divisional playoff round. Getting exciting, right? Hopefully you picked some winners last week. We did. Hey, this is a great show. Not only do we help you for Survivor, which our Survivor pool is still going through the playoffs and Super Bowl, but we also give you great information, metrics. We make our top picks for the week for wagering. Hopefully it helps you with DFS, conference pools, whatever else too. Let's get right into it. Did you survive last week? We woulda. We had chosen Cincinnati. I say woulda because here's a look at our big pool. 1,954 entries. We're down to 5 players. 1 went out last week. I went out in 7th place, tied for 7th. I chose Tennessee to beat Houston of all teams, and Derrick Henry fumbled. And Houston won that game. I did say that if I didn't choose Tennessee, I would have taken San Francisco that game. I was saving them for a playoff, so I'd have them twice in the playoffs. But anyway, so what we're doing is we're going back and assuming I would have taken San Francisco, and I'm playing it through on how I would play it out to see if I could have still won. So you can see there our big pool. Now, the mid-year pool, we had 210 entries. 21 were left going into last week. 10 people went out with the Chargers and Vikings. So you can see we're down to 11 players remaining there. That pool has a little bit of a different set of rules. You can only use each team once from that midpoint. So if you use a Buffalo, you can't use them again, period. Here is what happened last week, our wild card results. San Francisco, the over, and the team total over. We picked all those. Those are our best plays of the week. They all hit. We love the Giants over, and that hit. Couple of quick notes. Jacksonville, boy, if you chose them, you didn't sweat it out, did you? Look, Brandon Staley, we said this last week. The guy's got to go. He's a good coach. But this team, the Chargers, a bunch of veterans. You got guys like Khalil Mack and Keenan Allen. These guys are in their prime right now. They need to win next year. They need to let go of Staley, get a veteran coach in there, and go win it next year. You know, let the guy go be a coordinator for a couple years. He'll get another head coaching job again. It'll be a second go-around. He'll have his experience, and he'll probably do great. But he's not the guy for that team next year at all. You can't trust a guy who's winning 27-0 and blows a game. All right? I'm going to try to see how high my voice can get this year. Miami Buffalo, you know, we gave you Buffalo and the under, and it would have gone that way. But Josh Allen was awful. The Buffalo coaches find ways to lose games. They've got to reel him in. You can't play like that and beat Cincinnati or Kansas City. No way, no how. Buffalo goes up 17-0, 3 straight drives, score, boom, boom, boom. And then he just gets super sloppy. 2 interceptions, lets Miami back in the game. Then they take a lead 20-17 at halftime. First drive out of the half. What's Josh Allen do? Fumble, touchdown Miami. Can't play that way, cannot do it. Remember, I told you for Survivor purposes, I picked Buffalo, Philadelphia at the beginning of the year to be the Super Bowl. And so I'm kind of playing it through that way, assuming Buffalo is going to get there. I can't trust them. You can't trust this coach and staff for Josh Allen. Minnesota Giants. We gave you the Giants. Nice win there. Number 1 ATS team. Cincinnati struggled, but you know, since we're going to show you this later, Cincinnati's biggest struggles this year are with AFC North teams, and in particular Baltimore. I expect them to play better this week. They will. Dallas crushes Tampa Bay. All year long they played this way. Brady flung it around for 300, 350 yards a game, but they couldn't score. And the same thing happened. Dallas whooped them. All right, you see 4-2 of the Dogs. Here's the interesting part, right? This year has been a season of unders. Over 55% of all games went under this year. That's a huge amount, 55, almost 56%. And in the wild card round, 63% of unders usually hit. Yet look what happened, 5-1 to the over last week, 5-1. And it could have been 6-0, but one particular kicker missed 4 extra points. We're going to talk about that a little bit later. You can see here on our scoring, last week, our OU average for the games was 44.5. Normally for Wild Card Weekend, the OU average is over 47 points. It's between 47 and 48. It was down to 44.5, and then the average of the 6 games was over 55 points a game. That's very high. Easily we hit overs. Now look what's happening this week, okay? Here comes the divisional round. The last 5 years, the OU average has been 48.28. The average points per game has been 48.75. And down on the bottom there, you can see the divisional round this week, our current OU average is 48.75. The exact same as our average points per game over the last 5 years. The one thing to be careful on, normally we have higher scoring games in the divisional round. However, last week we had a deflated OU average. This week it's back up there pretty high. Got to be careful on that one. Here's our schedule for this weekend. Highest spread on the board is Kansas City -8.5, then Philly minus 7.5. Both those games are at home on Saturday, the 2 number 1 seeds, all right? Thanks to JohnSwire.com. Thanks to CooperGroove.com, our sponsor. Please like and subscribe to us. We really appreciate it. It helps us out. Real quick, we're going to get into some analytics here. I've got some great data for you. Check out this video. Hey everybody, welcome back to another outstanding edition of You Bet Your A Winner of the NFL Data Trivia Show. Let's get right into it. I got a great question for you today. Here we go. Since 2007, playoff favorites cover the spread 45% of all games. Not including Super Bowls though. Home favorites have covered the spread 64 of those games. How many of these 64 games also went over the total? Okay, home favorite wins, covers the spread. How many of those games went over the total? Is it A, 44, which would be 69% of those games, B, 37, C, 32, D, 27, E, 23? Got your answers? I'll give you a second. Ready? Got your answers? The correct answer is A, 44. Almost 70% of the time, when the home favorite wins and covers, the game goes over the total. Here, bonus question, then we'll get into this real quick. Same scenario. How many away favorites covered the spread and the game went over? Is it A, 17, B, 13, C, 9, D, 5, or E, 0? The correct answer is 0. So check this out. Look at this. If you're playing home favorites, you may as well tie the over with it, right? So if you're going to bet maybe a parlay, you'd want it to, if you're betting that home team to win and cover, you'll want to parlay it with the over because 70% of the time, nearly 70% of the time, the over hits with those games. Now on the other side, if you're going with an away favorite to win the game and cover, take the under, because look at that. It's 9 unders, 0 overs. 100% under. And take a look what happened last week in the wild card round. Dallas, an away favorite, wins, covers, under 4 missed extra points. Like some forces out there keeping this crazy stat at 0%, actually 100% to the under. All right, we're back. I think that's some pretty good information, right? All right, let's get into this. Rematches. Rematches are key, and we'll show you why here. During this season, Jacksonville played at Kansas City, Week 10. Chiefs were 9.5-point favorites, over 51.5. Chiefs beat them 27-17, so they covered, but it went under. Okay, covered and under. Interesting. I'm going to tell you, the Chiefs don't score quite as much as you think at home. They did not hit 30 at home all year, and the OU in this game is at 53. This is going to be tricky. Philly at the Giants, they played twice this year, and in game 1, Philly crushed the Giants 48-22 in New York as a 7-point favorite. OU is 44.5. Philly did it themselves. Hurts was at his finest. And what do we know about rematches? If a team goes in and wins by 3 scores or more, and Philly won by 26 there, so it's more than 17 points, they win the rematch 73% of the time. Now, the second time they played this year was the last week of the season. Giants didn't play any of their starters. Hurts was coming off that injury, and he played, I don't want to say timidly, but he was not aggressive at all. You could tell he was trying to not to get injured or get hit at all. Because Philly didn't play that well. They did not cover, but they did win, toss that game out, right? Dallas, San Francisco didn't play. Cincinnati, Buffalo was the DeMar Hamlin game that got interrupted. So that's going to be a weird thing, this weekend, any potential effects that we might see from that. But looking at rematches now. Team winning in the regular season game by typically wins a playoff game 65% of the time, and they cover 52% of the time. So Kansas City beat Jacksonville 27-17. I kind of expect Kansas City to win and cover this weekend, right? Based on that. Last week, Tampa had beaten Dallas in the regular season, and they lost and did not cover, so that goes against it. On the other side, San Francisco had beaten Seattle, and they won. San Francisco also swept the series, and we know that those teams go 12-6 at home in the rematch, the playoffs, 67% winners, winning and covering, and San Francisco did that. Team wins on the road by 3 scores or more, 17 points. You can see there, 73% they win the playoff games, 57% cover the spread. Philly beat the Giants by 26. We just talked about that. Last week, we know Jacksonville went into LA and beat them 38-10 during the regular season by 3 scores or more. And they won and covered easily, right? Whew. But they did win and cover in that game. So, the rematch effects held pretty true to form last week. Here's how we're ranking them for in play this week for survivor purposes. Number one's obviously Kansas City, 8.5-point favorite. I think Jacksonville has done it. They've done everything they wanted to do this season. Started off a little rough, new coach, got some new energy, new life in there, struggled at the beginning. They're built some huge momentum at the end of the year here, did really well, and they won a playoff game. Now you're going to go up against Kansas City, and Kansas City is going to be a tough one to win. They got nothing to lose, obviously, but I think it's going to be the end of the road for them. Giants and Philly, sort of same thing. Philly's had a great season. The big thing here is Hurts' shoulder hurting or not? Cincy, Buffalo, Dallas, San Francisco should be really good games. Let's take a look here at our number one in play, the Chiefs. They've won 5 of 6 and 10 of 11. They beat the Jags 27-17 early in the year. And in that game, the Chiefs had 496 yards to Jacksonville's 315. The problem was Kansas City turned it over 3 times. Now, early in the year, Trevor Lawrence was turning it over. But you could see there in that game, he had 0 turnovers. Now, last week, Jacksonville had 5 turnovers. Count them, 5. We have not had a team win a playoff game. We've had one team in the past 17 years have 5 turnovers and win the game. That was Seattle beating Green Bay, but Green Bay also had 2 turnovers. Last week, Jacksonville had 5, Chargers had 0, and Jacksonville wins. Unbelievable. But that's a key again. If Lawrence turns the ball over like he did last week, they're dead. All right, now here's what's interesting. The Chiefs, they've only scored 27 or more points in half their home games this year. You would think it would be more, and they did not reach 30 points at home this year. So, that kind of makes you lean under. The first game went under. You think under. Well, we'll look at some other things here coming up. Jacksonville has won 6 straight, scoring 30-18. In the playoffs, they're 4-0 against the spread as a dog. Their lowest away scores were 14 at Detroit and then 17 at Kansas City here. Now, since that point, they've been scoring a lot higher and playing a lot better, committing less turnovers, till last week, of course. They still put up 30-some last week. I think Jacksonville will score some points this thing will get over. This is interesting, though. This is why I'm leaning over. In the last 5 years, when Kansas City wins a playoff game, it's 5-1 to the over. So I'm leaning Chiefs. I think Jacksonville will cover, but I think this game goes over. That's kind of what I'm thinking here. One other note here. I've talked about this before in the past. With teams at rushing yards in the playoffs generally win the game. They win 74% of the time, and at home, 84% straight up. Last time these two teams met, Kansas City outrushed Jacksonville like double, 155 to 75 yards. If that happens again, Chiefs should win easily. And if you look up there, the Chiefs' rush defense is actually pretty good. They're a top 10 against the run. Part of that's because teams are throwing against them all the time because they get behind, right? But still, it's a pretty good rush defense. All right, number 2 is Philadelphia. Obviously, the big key here is Jalen Hurts' shoulder and how he's feeling and playing. If he comes out and plays like he did the first 14, 15 games this year, Philly's going to romp and win and move on because they're the best team in football on both sides of the ball. They have everything. They have great backups, great offensive line, great defensive. They got everything in place to go win it this year. I'm kind of rooting for them. I like the Giants and what they're doing. I'm kind of rooting for the Giants next year. Isaiah Hodgins is a steal. He's a stud. Next year in fantasy drafts, go get him. He's going to be a steal, I'm telling you. Let's look at what happened with Hurts. They lost 2 of 3 at the end of the year with, basically without him or with him hurt. And that last game you can kind of throw away. But, in the one that they beat the Giants, it was 48-22. Philly opened the game with 3 straight touchdown drives. They had 7 sacks in that game. They outgained the Giants. You can see they're 437 to 304. And they doubled their rushing total. And again, we talked about this. The teams that rush for more yards win. It's a ridiculous amount in the playoffs. Now, the Giants, they've won 3 of 5, but 2 of those were against Minnesota. And then going back before that, they lost a bunch in a row. So the second half of the year, they've been kind of down. I mean, they beat Houston, they beat Washington, they tied Washington, they beat Minnesota. So they've kind of struggled. I like Dable. I like where they're going. But if Hurts is okay, Philly is going to whoop them here. I do like the Giants to cover, though, 7.5. I think the Giants get back door. As you can see down there, the Giants are 8-2 as playoff dogs. They're the best team against the spread in the playoffs over the last 17 years. And they were number 1 against the spread this year at 14-4. That means something. I like them there. So anyways, but Philadelphia does look too tough this game. San Francisco, Dallas. Now, I like San Francisco. I think they're playing unbelievably well. Brock Purdy has been truly sensational. He's been sensational, but he has a small window of games, okay? You can't get overblown with these guys. He's played, 5 games? You can't go, oh, Brock Purdy, he's a stallion, he's a superstar. But he's been great during this stretch. Is there a game where he blows up? All my friends are like, oh, he's going to blow up at some point, and he's going to get killed. Well, Josh Allen blew up last week, and he's a veteran. I mean, Josh Allen stunk last week, you guys. He played about as, and Trevor Lawrence stunk. Now, he's a younger guy, like Purdy. He does have a little more experience than Purdy. I think Purdy doesn't have to be spectacular, and he knows that. And with those weapons he has, he just has to put the ball in their hands. You're still talking about a team, San Francisco, they've won 11 in a row, outscoring teams like double their points. They've covered 8 of 9. Dallas has won 7 of 9, by 31-21. But I will say this, the first 8 games of the year, Dallas's defense was phenomenal, shutting teams down to under 16 points a game. They were the number 1 sack team in football. They had a couple injuries, and now they've slipped back in terms of getting sacks, especially these last 6-8 games. They're going to need to get to Purdy and put some pressure on him and make him feel it. And if they can't, I think Purdy will pick him apart, and the San Francisco running game should do just fine, thank you. If you look at it, Dallas's rush defense is 22nd. It's probably their one Achilles heel on that team. They're very solid on both sides of the ball. But San Francisco, you can see, is a good rush offense with McCaffrey and Elijah Mitchell and Deebo Samuel in the mix and Ray McCloud. I think San Francisco will probably run pretty well against them. Now, people have talked about this. Oh, they're just going to run. I don't think so. They haven't done that with Purdy yet. They expect Purdy to throw for 200 to 240 yards. And when he does, that running game opens up even bigger, and that's how they dominate you. See, they're 7-2 as a playoff favorite, 5-2 when it goes over. I like San Francisco, and I like the over. Number 4, Buffalo-Cincy. Now, this is probably the most risky game of the week. I could argue cases on both sides. Let's take a look. Buffalo's won 8 straight, basically by a score of 30-20. They're 8-1 at home. Their only loss was that weird Minnesota game where Josh Allen fumbled at the 1-yard line. I mean, talk about finding ways to lose again. That's this Buffalo team for you. They blew that playoff game against Kansas City last year. They blow that game at the 1-yard line where all they have to do is take a knee or just quarterback sneak it forward 2 plays and it's over. And then last week they almost blow the game. You just can't trust these guys. That's what scares me. And look at Cincinnati now. They've won 9 straight. You can see they're dominating against the spread, 20-5. They're 6-3 away. That's pretty good. But here's the biggest stats for Cincinnati to know. Against the AFC North, okay, they played 7 games this year, and they went 4-3. That's where most of their losses came from. They only outscored teams 21.5-21. Now, every other team they played against outside the AFC North, 9 games, they went 8-1, and they outscored teams 31-21, 10 more points per game. And I'm telling you right now, Cincinnati's going to score more than they did. The Ravens are like their Achilles heel. In 3 games this year, Cincinnati had over 300 yards in any of those games. Okay? But every other game, since, outside of their division, Cincinnati's racking up yards left and right. And yes, they played some teams like Atlanta and Carolina, and they really rolled it up. But they also beat the Chiefs. Tampa, I believe. They played Dallas. So they've beaten some pretty good teams in there, too. They lost to Dallas. But they can rack up some yards against these teams. Another thing to look at here, Buffalo is 3rd worst in the league in turnovers. They turn the ball over like crazy. Now, their turnover differential isn't bad because they get some takeaways, but they're the 3rd worst in the league in turnovers. They turned it over 3 times last week. If they turn it over like that against Cincinnati, the Bengals are going to win this game. You can see there, though, Buffalo is 4-0 in the playoffs, straight up as a favorite, and they're the favorite this week, and they are at home. One other thing to note, we talked about the rushing yardage. Buffalo, you can see, has a good rush offense. Cincinnati's 29th in rushing. Now, it's not to say they can't run, it's just that they haven't really. Cincinnati's rush defense is pretty good. That's going to be the key here. Shut down Buffalo's running, and most of Buffalo's rushing is Josh Allen. It's not Singletary. Cook's been okay, but it's really shutting down Josh Allen. Here's our playoff grid. It's updated, and you can see here, you got these 8 teams left. Now, for me, for Survivor, I use Cincinnati, so I can't use them again, right? And I was thinking about using Kansas City. Let's look at my picks in the primary poll. I was going to play Kansas City this week because they're the easiest pick, right? But in order for me, if I were to win Survivor, I got to make a little riskier pick here. So you can see here, if I really want a chance to win, because you have to assume it's going through the Super Bowl. I've done this before. I've been in this spot, and I got stuck with a team. I didn't have a team in the Super Bowl. So with 5 players left, I gotta assume someone's getting there. Unless, like last year, we had 3 massive upsets in the divisional round and this round, and everybody went out. But you can't assume there's gonna be 3 upsets in this round. Someone's getting through. And if you wanna get through, you gotta have a Super Bowl team. So, makes sense. I'm gonna flip through. I'm gonna have to pick San Francisco or Philly. Now, my gut says San Francisco is gonna win it this year. But you got a rookie quarterback. If Hurts is full health, I honestly believe Philly will win it all. So if I stick to my original guns of Philly-Buffalo, then I would take San Francisco this week. That at least leaves me Kansas City on the other side in case Cincinnati beats Buffalo. If Buffalo wins, then I got both of them still. So I have an AFC pick. And then I'd have Philly, hopefully they beat the Giants, on the NFC side. I would take 1 in Conference Championship round week, 1 for the Super Bowl, right? Does that make sense? Otherwise, if I take Kansas City this week and Cincinnati beats Buffalo, I will not have a Super Bowl team. So that's how you got to do it. All right, let's look at some things for your wagering. We'll get into my top 5 picks this week. First of all, here's some analytics for divisional round, okay? First of all, favorites win straight up in divisional round, 64%, 65% of the time. That's actually down from normal 67% during all game. But favorites against the spread, you can see overall 43.5%. But the last 5 years, it's been 50-50. 50-50 favorites and dogs in the divisional round. Home team straight up, though, here's what's interesting. Overall, they win 66% of the time. Last 5 years, 70% of the time. We know home teams normally win between 55 and 56% of the time. So in the divisional round, that really spikes up. Home teams are a big edge. Home teams against the spread, overall, 45% winners against spread. But last 5 years, it's jumped to 55%. So home favorites, perform a little bit better in the divisional round the last 5 years. Over-under, overall, 55%. But in the last 5 years, that's ducked down to 50%. Divisional over-under data, when the home favorite wins and covers against the spread, the over is 21-5. So if you're taking the home favorite to win and cover, if you're going to take the Chiefs to win and cover, you may as well parlay it with the over because that over hits 80% of the time. Feel what I'm saying here? You're taking San Francisco to win and cover, may as well go over it. It's 80% of the time. That doesn't mean it hits every time. Just saying. Now take a look. Away favorites, home dogs, away dogs, they win and cover the spread. The over is 14-24. It only hits 36, 37% of the time. The under hits 63% of the time. This week we have all away dogs, okay? So if you're taking away dog to win and cover, you probably want to go lean under at least because it's 2/3 of the time the under is going to hit. Dig it? All right, so here's another quick summary of some data we have from the past. Divisional games are usually higher scoring than wildcard games, but maybe not from this year. So we should see 2 out of the 3 OUs between 43 and 51 go over. Now last year, those went 1 and 2. But we have 3 games again in that range. We should see 2 of the 3 go over. In terms of upsets, we usually see 1 outright upset winner in this round every single year. Last year we saw 3. So you got to decide which one's it going to be, right? I'm leaning Cincinnati maybe. All right. Teams that rush more win 75% of the games. Teams that rush have more rushing yards win 75% of the game. Last year those teams went 4-0 in the divisional round, okay? Now let's look at the current betting trends before we get into my picks. You can see here, the public loves the over. They've got every game over by a landslide. I have a feeling at least one of these games is going under, if not 2, but at least 1, right? So which one do you think it is? I'll tell you mine in a minute. But you can see there, everybody's leaning Kansas City, the Giants, Cincinnati, and then San Francisco. The 2 favorites they like are KC and Frisco. Makes sense. The 2 dogs they're leaning to are Cincinnati, who's 20-5 against the spread the last 25. That's crazy numbers. And the Giants, who are 14-4 against the spread this year, the number 1 spread team, okay? Who am I looking at? Now, one thing I'm going to tell you, I was 3-5 in this last year. So you may go reverse Cheezeman, all right? But here are my picks this week. I like Jacksonville getting those points. I like the over here. I think Kansas City wins. And when they win, their games tend to go over in the playoffs. But I like Jacksonville to cover this one. I like the Giants just for that reason. 14-4 against spread. I'm taking them. I like the under in this game, though. I think Philly jumps out to a lead, just like they did the first 2 games. And then they sort of hold on. Giants maybe get a back door, but it goes under. Cincy Buffalo, I like Cincinnati to cover. I think this is an over. Burrow's going to fling it around. But if there was a game I would take under a second game, it would be this one because I love the San Francisco over. I said this last few weeks. I think San Francisco will score 40 themselves. They scored 38. They scored 41. I think they'll do it again. Even if Purdy throws 3 picks, I think San Francisco can still score some points, and I don't think they'll stop Dallas. I don't think they'll stop them. So the 46, I like the over. I like the San Francisco team total over. Here's my top 5 plays from last week. You can see in the wild card round, my top 5 went 3-2. Bonus went 3-2. The one game that killed me was Buffalo in the under. Look, I'm not going to lie. I was ticked at Josh Allen. You're up 7. You run out to a 17-0 lead. Game's going exactly as you would expect. As long as you don't turn it over, Miami couldn't move the ball. If Josh Allen doesn't play like a... Buffalo wins, covers, and the game goes under. And we would have hit a lot of plays there. So that's when it really ticked me off the most. All right, this week, who am I looking at for divisional round? Top 5 plays. My favorite plays are the San Francisco over. And I like the San Francisco team total over. I think both those things hit. I like the Kansas City over. I'm going to take the Bengals in the 5, which I think it's even going up now, which I don't get. As you'll see in my bonus picks, I like Philly in the first quarter, Philly in the first half. Why? Philly ran out to a 21-0 lead against Giants the first time. And the second game, they ran out to a 16-0 lead. They won both the first quarter plays and the first half plays. I'm going to gamble on that again. I think Philly jumps out to a lead. And then the second half, Philly does what they do. Grind, 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 chew some clock, and win the game 27-2. Giants come back, get a touchdown in the end, and they win like 27-20. Game goes under. Giants cover. Blah, blah, blah. My other bonus plays. Now here I chose Cincinnati under 48. Both Buffalo and Cincinnati have played more unders than overs. My gut says this game's going to go over. Part of the picks for the OU depends on how the other games go, right? Last week, we had 5 overs into that Tampa-Dallas game, and I was leaning under anyway, but I'm like, okay, I'm definitely going under. Very rarely do we have 6 straight games go over, especially in the wild card round. And it worked out when a guy misses 4 extra points. So there's my 10 picks, top 5 and bonus picks. Going back to Survivor. You know, I doubt everyone goes out this week, so I'm not going to play it safe. I'm going to go ahead and pick San Francisco. I'm going to keep thinking it's Buffalo, Philly in the Super Bowl, but I want to make sure I have an opportunity to have a Super Bowl team. If Cincinnati were to beat Buffalo and I chose Kansas City, I would not have a Super Bowl pick, for sure. So I'm going to go ahead and take San Francisco this week, and we'll see how it rides, man. Go Niners. Hopefully they win. All right, you guys, really appreciate you being here. Thanks, JohnSwire.com. Thanks, CooperGroup.com. Please like and subscribe to us. This has been Picking Winners of the Cheezeman, week number 20. We will be back for conference round next week. Come back and join us. Good luck, and we hope you survive.